You don't belong on this aircraft, sweetheart. This is a private executive jet, not a city bus. So whoever told you that you could just walk on here, lied to you. Get off. Now. The word slashed through the cabin like a blade pulled across silk. Every soft conversation inside the aircraft dies in the throat of whoever was speaking. The crystal tumblers stop clinking against the leather side tables. Even the muted hum of the auxiliary power unit seems to lean back, as if the aircraft itself is holding its breath, listening. Amara Whitfield does not move. She stands just inside the cabin door, one hand resting lightly on the polished walnut handrail, the other holding a slim black leather portfolio that has flown over 4 million miles in her possession. The late afternoon sun pours through the oval windows, drawing a clean golden line across her charcoal cashmere blazer. Tyler. Quiet. The kind of expensive that does not need to introduce itself to the room. Her shoes are not the loud kind. Her jewelry is not the loud kind. Her perfume is not the loud kind. Everything about Amara Whitfield is quiet. And in the world she lives in, quiet is not the absence of power. Quiet is the signature of it. She is 49 years old. The founder, chairwoman, and majority owner of Whitfield Aviation Group. The first black woman in American history to build a private aviation empire of this scale from the ground up. Net worth, last estimated by Forbes, at $1.7 billion. Not inherited. Not married into. Not handed to her by a family trust. Built. One leased turboprop at a time. Across 30 years. Out of Atlanta. She owns the fuselage she is standing inside. She owns the tarmac the stairs are bolted to. She owns the maintenance hangar 2 miles north. She owns the leasing company that put the operating certificate on the side of this aircraft. She owns the uniform that Tiffany Brooks is currently wearing. But Tiffany Brooks does not know any of that. Not yet. Because Tiffany Brooks has decided, in the last 40 seconds, that the woman standing in the doorway is a problem to be removed. Not a person to be seen. Standing in front of her is Tiffany Brooks. 54 years old. Hired 3 months ago, crisp uniform. Hair pinned with the precision of a surgical instrument. A smile stretched so tight across her face, it looks like the next breath might split it open. But her eyes tell the real story. Not confusion. Not concern. Not even the discomfort of someone making a mistake. Judgment. The kind that arrives long before any evidence. Ma'am, I don't know who let you onto this tarmac, Tiffany says, voice rising now, performing for the 2 other crew members watching from the galley. But this aircraft is reserved for the Whitfield Group leadership team. You are going to need to turn around, walk back down those stairs, and find whoever sent you here, because they clearly made a mistake. A pause. Heavy. Charged. Amara looks at her. Slowly. The way someone looks at a problem they have already solved, and is simply waiting for the room to catch up. Her eyes are dark. Steady. Unblinking. The kind of gaze that measures a room in 3 seconds, and remembers every detail for the next 10 years. I am Whitfield Group leadership, she says. Her voice is soft. Almost gentle. But every syllable lands clean against the polished wood and leather of the cabin. Tiffany lets out a short laugh. The kind that is meant to be heard. The kind that is performed. Sure you are, honey. And I'm the Queen of England. Listen. I have been doing this job long enough to know who flies on these jets. So unless you can tell me your name on the manifest right now. I'm calling security and you can explain it to them down on the ground. Being here, a younger flight attendant freezes mid-step. Danielle Park. 26 years old. 6 weeks into this position. A is holding a tray of cold towels and a glass of sparkling water that no one has asked for. His eyes move between Tiffany and Amara, and something in his face begins to register that this scene is not going to end the way Tiffany believes it will. A has been told, more than once, that the principal of the company sometimes flies on these jets without warning. A has been told that she does not announce herself. A has been told that she values quiet, dignity, and people who do not assume. He has been told all of this, and he is now watching, in real time, as his senior colleague forgets every word of it. Further inside the cabin, 2 business associates are already seated. Both of them are men. Both of them are white. Both of them traveled here specifically to meet with Amara today. The first is Richard Holloway. Late 50s. Senior managing partner at one of the largest aerospace acquisition firms on the East Coast. A has flown on this jet 4 times before. A recognizes Amara the moment she steps inside. His mouth opens, then closes. A glances at Tiffany. Then at his colleague. Then he very quietly sets down his crystal glass, and waits. A has worked with Amara for 11 years. A has watched her, more times than he can count, handle situations exactly like this one. A has learned, the hard way, that the worst thing he can do is interrupt her. So he sits. The second is Marcus Bennett. Mid-40s. A regulatory consultant who has only met Amara twice before, but he has read her name in the Wall Street Journal more times than he can count. A clears his throat. Begins to speak. Then catches the look on Amara's face, and decides to let her handle this herself. Because the look on Amara's face says, "Do not rescue me. Let it happen. Let it all happen." In the galley, the second junior flight attendant is also frozen. Her name is Lena Diaz. 29 years old. 9 years in private and commercial aviation. She has worked under 14 senior flight attendants over the course of her career. She has seen rude crew. She has seen sharp crew. She has seen crew who took themselves too seriously and crew who took themselves not seriously enough. She has never, in 9 years, seen a colleague speak to a passenger, any passenger, the way Tiffany Brooks is speaking right now. And something deep in her stomach is beginning to twist. "What is your name?" Tiffany asks, voice cutting harder now, fully committed to a story she has already written in her head. Wheatfield, Amara replies. A pause. Tiffany's smile cracks just slightly, then snaps back into place. Sure. Wheatfield. Of course it is. She actually laughs again. This time louder. Like she is performing for an invisible audience. In the back of the cabin, Richard Holloway briefly closes his eyes again. A has been holding his breath for nearly a full minute now. A is a man who has negotiated billion-dollar deals across 3 continents. A has sat across from Saudi princes and African presidents and Asian central bankers. A is not easily rattled. A is rattled right now. Because he knows what is about to happen in this cabin. He has known it since the moment Tiffany's voice first rose. And he knows that the woman his colleague is currently mocking is not someone who escalates. She is someone who does not need to. She is someone whose stillness, by the time it finally answers, will be answered with the kind of finality that makes the room rearrange itself around her. A has watched it happen, in conference rooms, in boardrooms, in negotiations that lasted 12 hours. A has watched men 3 times his size walk out of those rooms looking like they had just survived a quiet, professional execution. A knows what Tiffany Brooks does not know. He is watching a woman walk into the lion's den, while believing she is the lion. Look, ma'am. You don't have time for games today. We have a flight scheduled for 32 minutes from now. We have actual passengers boarding. So if you don't have legitimate paperwork showing you belong on this aircraft, I am going to have to ask you, one more time, very politely, to leave. Amara does not blink. Does not move. Does not even shift the weight of the portfolio in her hand. I have been on this aircraft 67 times in the last 4 years, she says. I selected the leather. I approved the cabin finish. I personally signed the lease that put your employer's name on the operating certificate. He sat with the interior designer for 11 hours to choose the wood paneling you are standing in front of right now. I smile, tight silence falls in the galley. Daniel Park's hand begins to tremble around the tray of cold towels. Richard Holloway closes his eyes for just a half second. The way men close their eyes when they know a hurricane is about to make landfall. Tiffany, however, does not hear any of it. She has already decided. She has already cast everyone in this story. And in her version, the black woman standing in the doorway of a private executive jet cannot possibly be who she says she is. In the galley, Lena's stomach is twisting harder now. Something in her brain is telling her, say something. Say something now. Say it before this gets worse. But the words will not come. Her tongue feels heavy. Her colleague is right there. Her colleague is her senior. Her colleague has been doing this longer than she has. Her colleague must know something she does not. Except, deep down, Lena knows. She has always known. She has worked with Tiffany on 6 previous rotations, and on every single one of them, she has watched Tiffany be a little sharper, a little colder, a little more dismissive with certain passengers than with others. She has noticed it. She has not said anything. She has told herself she was imagining it. She was not imagining it. The galley is suddenly very quiet. So Tiffany makes a choice. The kind of choice that changes lives. She steps forward. Reaches out. And puts her hand flat against Amara's chest, to physically push her back toward the stairs. It is not a gentle push. It is not a careful one. It is the kind of contact that says, I do not believe you exist in the way you say you exist, and I am going to use my body to correct it. The cabin freezes. Daniel Park drops the tray. The glass of sparkling water shatters against the floor. The crystal scatters in 3 directions. Cold towels unfurl like white birds across the carpet. Richard Holloway stands up. Marcus Bennett unbuckles his seatbelt. And Amara. Amara does not move. She does not flinch. She does not stumble. She simply looks down, at the hand pressed against her blazer, and then back up at Tiffany. Take your hand off me, she says. Her voice is quieter than before. Which is what makes it terrifying. Tiffany does not move her hand. In fact, she presses harder. Used slightly. Used enough to make the point. Or what? Tiffany says. And then it happens. The thing that no one in that cabin will forget. The thing that will end careers, dismantle contracts, and rewrite an entire airline's training manual within 48 hours. Tiffany lifts her hand from Amara's chest, raises it, and slaps her. Open palm. Across the face. Not hard enough to bruise. But hard enough to be heard. Hard enough to leave a faint red mark across Amara's cheekbone. Hard enough that the sound of it echoes off the curved cabin ceiling, off the walnut paneling, off the silent windows, off the suddenly motionless bodies of every witness inside that space. The sound of a hand striking a face is one of the oldest sounds in human history. It carries. It always carries. For exactly 2 seconds, no one breathes. Daniel Park has one hand over his mouth. His eyes are wide. Glassy. His knees feel like they might fold. Richard Holloway is already moving forward, but Amara raises her own hand. Used slightly. Used enough to stop him. Marcus Bennett has his phone out. He has not pressed record. He is simply holding it. Waiting. In the galley, Lena Diaz is frozen. One hand on the espresso machine. One hand over her chest. She has never, not once, seen a crew member strike a passenger. She has heard stories. She has read training documents about de-escalation. She has been told, over and over, that physical contact with a passenger is an instant termination. But knowing that, and seeing it happen 6 feet in front of you, are two different things. Inside Amara's mind, a very small, very quiet voice has just spoken. It is the voice she has carried inside her since she was 7 years old, when a teacher in a small classroom outside Macon, Georgia, slapped her hand with a wooden ruler for asking too many questions during a math lesson. She had not cried that day. She had simply gone home, looked at the small red mark on her hand, and decided, with the clarity of a child who has just learned something important, that she would build a ladder so large, that no one with a ruler would ever be able to reach her again. The voice in her head says, very softly, they reached you anyway. And then, just as softly, but you knew they would. She is ready. She has been ready her entire adult life. And in the cockpit corridor, door opens. The captain has heard the slap. A has heard the glass break. A is already moving. Amara still has not raised her voice. Has not raised her hand. Has not retreated a single inch from the spot where she has been standing this entire time. She lifts a finger. Touches her cheek. Looks at the faint trace of warmth on her fingertip. Then looks back at Tiffany. You just made a decision, Amara says quietly. And in about 10 minutes, it is going to define the rest of your life. Tiffany's chest is rising and falling fast now. The performance is gone. The smirk is gone. Some small, primal part of her brain is starting to understand that something has shifted in the cabin, and she does not know what it is yet. She tries to recover. She steps back. Straightens her uniform. Lifts her chin. I had every right to defend this aircraft from an intruder, she says. Her voice is shaking just slightly. She is trying very hard to make it not shake. You forced your way onto a private jet. You refused to comply. You threatened crew. I did not say a single threatening word, Amara replies. And every word you just said, is being recorded. She glances, very briefly, at Marcus Bennett. A nods once. His phone has been recording since the moment Tiffany's hand touched Amara's chest. The video is already 3 minutes long. It will be backed up to 2 separate secure servers before the cabin door is even closed for departure. Tiffany's eyes dart toward the phone. Then back to Amara. Then toward the cockpit corridor, where heavy footsteps are now approaching fast. The captain rounds the corner. His name is Michael Grant. 58 years old. 28 years of commercial and private aviation behind him. Silver hair. Lines surround his eyes from a lifetime of squinting against high-altitude sun. A has flown for 3 different airlines, 2 governments, and 1 ambassador. A has handled emergency landings, depressurizations, and 1 in-flight medical death. A has never, in 28 years, walked into a scene like this one. He says sweep the cabin. The broken glass. The scattered cold towels. The young flight attendant standing pale in the galley. The 2 executives standing in the aisle. The phone in Marcus Bennett's hand. And then his eyes find Amara. A stops walking. For exactly 1 full second. Captain Michael Grant does not move at all. Because he knows. A recognizes her instantly. A flew her from Geneva to New York 3 months ago. A flew her from Seattle to Dubai in February. A has met her husband. He has shaken her son's hand. A has been a personal pilot on this specific aircraft for the last 2 years, a position he was personally interviewed for, by the woman now standing in his cabin doorway with a red mark across her cheekbone. And then, finally, his eyes shift to Tiffany. What, he says, very slowly, did you just do? His voice is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is the voice of a man who has just realized that an entire chain of consequences has already begun moving, and he is now trying to figure out how to land the plane that has not yet taken off. Tiffany swallows hard. Captain. There was an unauthorized person attempting to board the aircraft. He was following protocol. He had every reason to believe. Stop, Grant says. 1 word. That is all it takes. He turns to Amara. Straightens. Drops his chin in the smallest, most unmistakable gesture of acknowledgement. AMARAS, Wheatfield. The name lands in the cabin like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples spread fast. Tiffany flinches. Her body actually flinches, the way a body flinches when it has just been told, without words, that it has made an unrecoverable mistake. Daniel Park says close. Lena Diaz quietly sets down the espresso pitcher and walks 2 steps backward, as if physical distance from the situation might somehow protect her. Captain Grant, Amara says. Her voice is calm. Almost warm. I'd like a brief word with you before we depart. And I would like Mr. Park, and Ms. Diaz, to remain in the galley. Ms. Brooks, you will stay exactly where you are. She does not raise her voice. She does not need to. Yes, ma'am, Grant says. He turns to Tiffany. The look on his face is the look of a man watching a building catch fire, and realizing he was the one who left the stove on. You do not. Moby, he says quietly. You do not speak. You do not touch your phone. You do not touch the door. Are we clear? Tiffany nods. Her face is the color of dry paper. Amara steps further into the cabin. Past Tiffany. Past the broken glass. Past the cold towels still scattered across the floor. She walks like nothing has happened. Like the slap was a single drop of rain that did not even land. But everyone in that cabin knows, it landed. It will land for years. She reaches Richard Holloway and Marcus Bennett. Touches Richard's arm briefly. A smile, almost private gesture. Thank you for waiting, she says. I apologize for the delay. Amara, Richard says, very quietly. Are you all right? She glances at him. For just a half second, something flickers in her face. Not pain. Not anger. Something older. Something more familiar than either of those things. The look of a woman who has been touched without permission, again, and is choosing, very deliberately, what to do about it. I will be, she says. Marcus, please keep your phone running. It hasn't stopped, he replies. She nods once. Then turns to Captain Grant. In the galley, please. With me. Grant follows her. So does Daniel Park, hands shaking, eyes lowered. So does Lena Diaz, looking like she might be sick. Tiffany stands alone in the middle of the cabin. Frozen exactly where she was told to stand. The slap still warm on her own palm. The first creeping understanding of what she has just done beginning to crawl up the back of her neck. In the galley, Amara turns and looks at the 3 crew members. Captain. Ms. Diaz. Mr. Park. I want each of you to tell me, in your own words, what just happened in that cabin. There is a small silence. Captain Grant speaks first. Mr. Wheatfield. I was in the cockpit completing the pre-flight checklist when I heard the sound of something breaking. I exited the cockpit corridor. I observed Ms. Brooks standing approximately 6 inches from your person. I observed glass on the floor. I observed a visible mark on your face. I did not personally witness physical contact, but I have known you for over 2 years, and I have known Ms. Brooks for 3 months. I have no difficulty drawing a conclusion. Amara nods slowly. Ms. Diaz. Lena swallows. Her hands are trembling. Mr. Wheatfield. I was preparing the welcome service. I heard Ms. Brooks tell you that you didn't belong on the aircraft. I heard her ask for your name. When you gave it, she laughed. I did not say anything. I should have said something. And then. I saw her hand go up. And I saw her. Lena's voice catches. I saw her hit you. Amara's expression does not change. Thank you, Ms. Diaz. Mr. Park. Danielle cannot meet her eyes. Ma'am. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I dropped the tray because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You should have stepped in. I should have said something the moment she pushed you. You have only been here 6 weeks and I was scared. And I'm sorry. That is not an excuse. He finally looks up. He says or what? What she did was wrong. He will say that to anyone. He will write it. He will testify to it. Whatever you need. Amara studies him for a long moment. Then she gives the smallest possible nod. Thank you for telling the truth, Mr. Park. That matters more than you know right now. And one day, you will understand exactly how much it matters. She turns back to Captain Grant. I want you to do 3 things in the next 10 minutes, she says. First. I want Ms. Brooks removed from this aircraft. Not in 5 minutes. Now. I do not want her speaking to me. I do not want her speaking to my guests. I do not want her touching any equipment, any luggage, or any documentation on this jet. I want her escorted off the stairs and held in the ground operations office until the proper authorities arrive. Yes, ma'am. Second. I want every piece of footage from the boarding bridge cameras, the tarmac cameras, and any cabin sensor that records ambient activity, transferred to a secure server before this aircraft moves a single inch. I do not want anything edited. I do not want anything lost. I want full chain of custody from the moment this conversation ends. Yes, ma'am. I make the calls personally. Third. She pauses. I want my legal team patched into the cockpit speaker before we taxi. I will speak to them. The crew will hear it. I want there to be no ambiguity in any room about what is about to happen. About what has just happened. And about what will happen next. Understood. She glances at Daniel and Lena. Mr. Park. Ms. Diaz. You will both remain on the aircraft for the duration of this flight. You will not be reprimanded for what you witnessed. But you will be interviewed by my counsel. Are you willing? Both of them nod. Yes, ma'am, Lena says quietly. Yes, ma'am, Daniel adds. Amara turns to leave the galley. Then pauses at the threshold. Looks over her shoulder. Ms. Diaz. Yes, ma'am. You were afraid to speak up. You said so yourself. I understand fear. I have lived inside it. I have built a company in spite of it. But understand this. Fear is not neutral. Silence is not neutral. The next time someone in this uniform is doing what Ms. Brooks did, I expect you to remember the sound of that slap, and to choose differently. Do you understand? Lena's eyes are full now. Yes, ma'am. I understand. Good. Amara steps back into the main cabin. Tiffany has not moved. Her arms are wrapped around herself. Her eyes are darting between Amara and the cabin door, and the windows, and the floor. The performance she had been giving has collapsed completely. What is left underneath is just a woman who has begun to understand the scale of what she has done. Ma'am. Ms. Whitfield. I need to explain. I didn't know. I had no way of knowing. Stop, Amara says. Tiffany stops. You have been employed by Whitfield Aviation for 91 days. You completed the new hire orientation conducted by my own training director. You signed an acknowledgement form stating you understood that the Whitfield Group employs the principals of the company on their own aircraft, and that under no circumstance are you to make assumptions about who belongs on board based on appearance. You signed that document, Ms. Brooks. Your signature is on file. Tiffany's mouth opens. Closes. And just now, in front of 2 senior business partners, 2 junior crew members, and at least 1 recording device, you put your hand on me. And then you struck me across the face. A long silence. That was not a mistake, Amara continues. A mistake is a missed checkpoint. A mistake is a forgotten step on a checklist. What you did required deliberate choices. You chose to disbelieve me. You chose to lay hands on me. You chose to use force. Those are not mistakes. Those are decisions. Tiffany begins to cry. It is not the dignified kind of crying. It is the kind that comes when the body has finally caught up with the consequences. Amara watches her for a moment. She does not soften. She does not harden either. She simply watches. Captain Grant. Please call ground operations. AVMS, Brooks removed. Yes, ma'am. He lifts his radio. And outside the aircraft, on the tarmac, 2 figures in reflective vests are already walking toward the stairs. Inside the cabin, the moment has shifted. The silence is no longer charged with confrontation. It is charged with consequence. Captain Grant speaks quietly into his radio. Ground operations confirms. A representative from the FBO is already on the way. Standard escort procedures are being initiated. The slap will be on file in 3 different reporting systems within the hour. Amara walks slowly to the rear of the cabin. To her usual seat. The one with the small brass plaque underneath the side panel. The plaque is not visible to passengers. It is not visible to crew. But it is there. It reads, for the woman who built this company from a single leased turboprop in Atlanta. With love, from your son. October 14th. She runs her fingertip along the edge of the plaque. Houston's. Then she sits down. Marcus Bennett approaches her quietly. Amara. The footage is uploading to my secure cloud as we speak. You have the audio of every word she said since you stepped onto the aircraft. You have the moment she pushed you. You have the slap. Send the file to Jared in legal, she says. And to my chief of staff. And to my husband. You want him to hear it from me before he sees it on a screen. Already done. Thank you, Marcus. She turns and looks at Richard Holloway, who is still standing near her seat. Richard. Seat. We have business to do. He refused to let this moment dictate the next 90 minutes of my schedule. Richard sits. Slowly. His face is still pale. Amara, are you absolutely sure you don't need a moment? You just got assaulted by a member of your own staff. By any measure, you have the right to. I know what rights I have, Richard. And that's. Of course you do. I'm sorry. She smiles at him faintly. A real smile. A smile. Tired. But real. Don't apologize. You ask because you were concerned. That's not a flaw. That's friendship. A smiles back. Tightly. In the front of the cabin. Tiffany Brooks is being escorted down the aircraft stairs by 2 members of ground operations. She is not handcuffed. She is not yelling. She is walking, head down, like a woman who has not yet understood how completely her life has just changed. She will understand soon enough. The aircraft door closes behind her. Captain Grant returns to the cabin. He stands at a respectful distance. MRS, Whitfield. Your legal team is patched in. Audio is live to the cabin speaker. Amara nods once. Connect us. A soft tone sounds in the cabin. Then a voice. MRS, Whitfield. This is Jared Coleman, General Counsel. I have you on speaker with Tanya Brooks Vega, Head of Corporate Compliance, and David Chen, our Chief of Operations. We have received the footage. We have reviewed the first 30 seconds. Are you safe? I am safe, Jared. Thank you for asking. Are you injured? There is a visible mark on my left cheek. I do not require medical attention. I am, however, going to ask my personal physician to examine me upon arrival, for purposes of documentation. Understood. We will arrange transport from the terminal. Thank you. There is a brief pause. Then Jared speaks again, very carefully. MRS, Whitfield, we are prepared to move on this immediately. What do you want done? Everyone in the cabin is listening now. The two business partners. The two crew members in the galley. Captain Grant, standing quietly near the cockpit door. Even the small mechanical sounds of the aircraft seem to pause. Amara folds her hands in her lap. Effective immediately. I want the following actions taken. And I want them documented in writing within the next 30 minutes. She does not speak quickly. She speaks the way she always speaks when something matters. Slowly. Clearly. So that no one in any room can later claim they misunderstood her. First. Tiffany Brooks is terminated. Effective today. Effective this hour. The termination will cite gross misconduct, physical assault on a passenger, violation of Code of Conduct sections relating to discriminatory behavior, and violation of crew safety protocols. There will be no severance. There will be no reference letter. There will be no negotiation. She will be processed out, escorted off the premises, and informed that any future contact with this company will be considered harassment. Confirmed, Jared replies. Already drafted. Second. I want every member of the senior management team responsible for her hiring, her training, and her supervision, reviewed within 24 hours. I want their names on my desk by tomorrow morning, along with documentation of how she made it through 3 months of employment with us, while clearly carrying the beliefs she demonstrated today. If any of them ignored prior warnings about her conduct, I want them terminated as well. Confirmed. Third. The entire crew rotation that was scheduled for her shift this week is to be removed from active duty pending review. Not banished. Reviewed. I want to know what they saw. What they heard. What they reported. What they did not report. If they were complicit in a pattern. I want to know. If they were not, they will be reinstated within 7 days with no impact to their record. Confirmed. She pauses. Fourth. The Director of Cabin Services who personally oversaw her onboarding. Mr. Donovan Reeves. A is to be relieved of his role effective immediately. A will be moved into a non-supervisory role pending a full audit of the people he has hired in the last 24 months. If that audit reveals he has been making hiring decisions based on the same assumptions Ms. Brooks operated on today, he will not be returning to a leadership role at this company. Ever. Confirmed. Fifth. I want a public statement drafted by tomorrow morning. It will be signed by me. It will name Tiffany Brooks. It will name the conduct. It will not soften the language. And it will commit, in writing, to specific reforms, including mandatory bias training, anonymous reporting channels, and a third-party audit of our human resources practices to be completed within 90 days. The third party will be a black-owned firm. I want options on my desk by Monday. Confirmed. Amara breathes in slowly. Then exhales. Sixth. The two crew members who are still on this aircraft. Lena Diaz and Daniel Park. They will not be punished. They were witnesses. They were also young, frightened, and outranked by the perpetrator. I want them placed into a paid mentorship program for emerging cabin crew. I want them paired with senior crew members who can model better leadership. They will be observed. They will be trained. They will be given the opportunity to rise. Not because they did everything right, but because they did not lie about what they saw. That matters. A small intake of breath from the galley. Lena, possibly. Or Daniel. Confirmed. Seventh, and finally. The footage. The legal file. The internal report. They are to be preserved indefinitely. They will not be deleted. They will not be sealed. They will be used in every future training program this company runs, with appropriate redactions for privacy. You want every new hire at Whitfield Aviation to know what happened today. You want them to know exactly what we do when this happens. So that we never have to do it twice. A long silence. Then Jared's voice. Quiet. Respectful. Confirmed. All 7 actions. Documented. Initiated. Executed. Amara closes her eyes for 1 full second. Then she opens them. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, David. I speak with all 3 of you when we land. The call disconnects. The cabin is silent. But the silence is different now. It is not the silence of confrontation. It is not the silence of fear. It is the silence that comes after a verdict has been read, in a courtroom where everyone in the room understood exactly what had been at stake. It is the silence of consequence delivered with precision. Captain Grant exhales very slowly through his nose. Like a man who has landed an aircraft in a crosswind he was not entirely sure he could handle. Daniel Park is wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Trying very hard not to be obvious about it. Lena Diaz is standing very straight. Like someone who has just received a gift she did not know she had earned. Richard Holloway leans toward Amara. His voice is low. Amara, that was extraordinary. She glances at him. The faintest flicker of a smile. That was Tuesday, Richard. He laughs. Sort. Surprised. Almost embarrassed. Marcus Bennett is staring at her like he is seeing something he has read about in business case studies, but has never quite witnessed in person. You didn't yell once, he says quietly. I never need to. She looks out the window. The aircraft is still on the tarmac. The ground crew has finished pulling the stairs away. The clearance light is blinking green on the wing. In a few minutes, they will taxi. In a few minutes, the doors will seal, and the cabin will hum, and the world will keep moving the way the world always keeps moving. But inside this cabin, something has just been set right that was sideways for 91 days. And outside this cabin, in an office building 17 miles away, a chief of staff is already drafting a press release. In another office, a compliance director is opening a folder. In another office, a head of human resources is being summoned to a meeting they did not see coming. In another office, an old, framed organizational chart is being quietly taken down off a wall, because the names on it no longer match the new reality. The slap echoed further than anyone in that cabin yet realizes. But Amara realizes. She has always realized. That is why she is who she is. She turns her gaze from the window back to the 2 men sitting across from her. Both of them are still watching her with something close to awe. Gentlemen, she says, lifting her portfolio. Shall we get back to business? Richard clears his throat. Of course. Marcus reaches for his tablet. And Amara Whitfield, the woman who had been slapped in the face 15 minutes earlier by a woman wearing a uniform stitched with her own company's logo, opens her leather portfolio, and begins reviewing the acquisition documents for a regional aviation maintenance company she is about to add to her empire. The cabin door seals. The captain returns to the cockpit. The engines begin to spin up. And the aircraft begins to move. Slowly at first. Then steady. Then strong. Outside the window, the runway stretches ahead. Clear. Ready. In the galley, Lina Diaz quietly picks up the last of the broken glass. Wraps it in a soft cloth. Places it gently into a small disposal bin. She does it the way someone treats evidence. Carefully. Reverently. Danielle Park watches her for a moment. Then quietly bends down and helps her gather the scattered cold towels. Neither of them speaks. Neither of them needs to. The aircraft begins to roll. Then accelerate. Then lift. And as the wheels leave the ground, the Atlantic shoreline drops away beneath them. A lone, slow horizon of blue. The sun catches the wings. The cabin pressurizes. The seatbelt light dims. Amara closes her portfolio for a moment. Used for a moment. She looks out the window. There is a faint mark still visible on her left cheek. She has not powdered it. She has not covered it. She has not asked for ice. She has not asked anyone to bring her makeup. Because she does not intend to hide it. The mark will be photographed in approximately 3 hours, by her personal physician, in a clinical setting, with proper lighting and timestamps. The photograph will be entered into a legal file. It will become part of a record that the entire company, and eventually parts of the public, will see. The mark itself will fade by morning. The record will not. She turns her face back into the cabin. Richard and Marcus are watching her. Quietly. Respectfully. Waiting. Let's begin with section 4, she says. The maintenance certifications. And just like that, the meeting begins. The flight continues. The story moves. But somewhere in the back of every person on that aircraft, a single sound continues to echo softly. A sound that does not fade with altitude. A sound that does not fade with time. The sound of an open hand striking a face. And the sound of what came after. The hours that follow that flight will become some of the most consequential hours in the modern history of private aviation. Not because of the slap itself. Slaps happen. The world is full of them. They are everywhere. They are old. What makes the next hours different is what one woman chooses to do with one slap. 3 hours later, the aircraft lands in Chicago. The ground crew at the FBO is unusually quiet. They have been told to expect a particular passenger. They have been instructed to behave normally. To do nothing unusual. To treat this as any other arrival. But the news has already started to move. In a corner of the operations office, a senior coordinator is on the phone with someone in legal. His voice is low. His face is tight. A is being told things he is not supposed to repeat. A repeats them anyway. Quietly. To the line supervisor. The line supervisor repeats them to the head of crew scheduling. The head of crew scheduling repeats them to her assistant. By the time Amara Whitfield steps off the aircraft in Chicago, the words Tiffany Brooks and SLAP and MARS, Whitfield and Terminated have already traveled through 3 layers of the company's communication network. Amara does not stop to engage with any of it. She walks down the stairs of her aircraft the way she always walks. Steady. Calm. Without ceremony. A black town car is waiting on the tarmac. A driver opens the door. Marcus and Richard follow her down. Captain Grant stands at attention at the top of the stairs. Before she enters the car, Amara turns back. She looks up at the aircraft. At the cabin door. At Danielle Park and Lina Diaz, both of whom are standing just inside the threshold, hands folded, watching her go. She lifts one hand. Used slightly. A small wave. Not for the world to see. For them. They both nod back. She gets into the car, the door closes. And the next phase begins. Within 48 hours, the following things will have happened. Tiffany Brooks will have been formally terminated, escorted from any property associated with Whitfield Aviation, and notified that all non-disclosure agreements she previously signed will be vigorously enforced. She will retain legal counsel. She will be advised, on her first meeting with that counsel, that her case is not winnable. That there is no jury in the country, no arbitration panel, no judge who will side with her against the documented footage, the audio recording, the eyewitness testimony, and the contract she herself signed at hire. She will be told that the best she can do is keep her mouth shut. She will discover that the footage of her actions has already been shared with the relevant aviation authorities, with whom Whitfield Aviation maintains a long history of cooperation. She will discover that her name has been quietly added to a private industry register that flags individuals for misconduct involving passengers. She will discover this not because someone tells her, but because she will apply for a job at a regional charter operation outside Houston 3 weeks later, and her application will be rejected within 90 minutes of submission. She will apply for another. Same result. She will apply for a position at a corporate fleet operation. Same result. By the end of the second month, Tiffany Brooks will understand. She will sit on the edge of her bed in a small apartment outside Dallas, looking at her laptop screen, and she will finally understand. She will not work in aviation again. She will not work in any role involving customer service for major airlines. She will not be celebrated. She will not be vilified publicly. She will simply disappear from the industry the way leaves disappear from a tree at the end of autumn. Quietly. Permanently. And it will be her own hand that put her there. The same hand she lifted on a private jet on a Tuesday afternoon, when she decided that the woman standing in the doorway could not possibly be who that woman said she was. She will not be the only one whose life changes. Donovan Reeves, the director of cabin services who hired her, will be removed from his role by the following Monday. The audit of his hiring practices will reveal a pattern. 6 out of the last 14 flight attendants he personally selected have been the subject of internal complaints involving discriminatory behavior. None of those complaints had been escalated. Several had been buried in his desk drawer. Donovan Reeves will not return to a leadership role at Whitfield Aviation. He will spend the next 18 months in an unsupervisory role with significantly reduced compensation, before finally taking early retirement, never quite understanding how a man who had built a career of being careful, of being polite, of being well-liked, could have ended up here. He will understand eventually. Most people do. The understanding always comes late. The 2 senior managers who supervised him will face their own reviews. One will resign within 10 days. The other will be reassigned to a non-supervisory role with significantly reduced compensation, and will spend the next year quietly mailing his resume to every other aviation company within reach. None of them will hire him. The aviation industry is small. People talk. The Chief of Human Resources at Whitfield Aviation will issue a company-wide memo within 7 days, outlining new mandatory training, new reporting channels, and new accountability structures. The memo will be 12 pages long. It will include the names of 3 external consultants. It will include the budget for the next 3 years of implementation. It will include a personal note from Amara Whitfield, hand-signed at the bottom of the final page. The note will say, simply, "We can do better. We will do better." And no one in this company will be allowed to forget what better looks like. The public statement that Amara signed will be published exactly when she said it would be. The day after the incident. It will name Tiffany Brooks. It will describe what she did. It will not soften the language. It will not blame the industry. It will not deflect. It will not invoke vague generalities. It will simply say, "This happened on one of our aircraft. It was unacceptable. We have terminated the employee. We are reviewing the systems that allowed her to remain employed for as long as she did. We will share the findings publicly when the audit is complete." The statement will be read more than 4 million times in the first week. It will be discussed on 3 different morning news programs. It will be cited in 2 Academic papers within the year on corporate accountability frameworks. The Wall Street Journal will publish a feature on Amara Whitfield 3 weeks later. It will be titled, simply, The Standard. It will be 8,000 words long. It will examine her career, her leadership style, her approach to consequence, and her refusal to perform the kind of public outrage that the modern media cycle expects of victims. The article will note, in its closing paragraph, that Amara Whitfield handled the entire incident with a level of composure that bordered on the supernatural. She will read the article in her home office in Atlanta, with a cup of tea cooling beside her, and she will quietly laugh at that line. Because the truth is much simpler than the article makes it sound. She has been preparing for this moment her entire life. Every black woman who has built something in a country that did not want her to build it, knows the day will come when someone in a uniform decides she does not belong inside her own creation. She had simply, decades ago, made peace with the fact that the day would arrive. She had decided, decades ago, what kind of woman she would be, when it did. In the days following the incident, letters will begin arriving at the Whitfield Aviation headquarters. Thousands of them. Some will be from other corporate executives, congratulating her on her response. Some will be from union leaders, thanking her for the way she protected the junior crew members. Some will be from civil rights organizations, asking her to speak at upcoming events. Most of them, however, will be from ordinary people. Black women, mostly. Some men. Some elderly. Some young. Each one telling her about a moment in their own life when someone in a uniform had told them they did not belong somewhere. A restaurant. A bank. A hospital. A school board meeting. A child's classroom. Each one telling her, in their own words, that her story had given them something they did not know they were missing. Amara will read every single one of those letters herself. Not in one sitting. Across weeks. Sitting in her home office in the evenings, with a cup of tea, with her dog at her feet. She will not respond publicly to any of them. But every letter that includes a return address will receive a handwritten reply, on her personal stationery, in her own handwriting. She will hire 2 additional administrative assistants just to keep up with the mail. She will keep every letter. All of them. In a series of leather-bound boxes in a closet next to her office. Years from now, when she is much older, and when her grandchildren are asking her questions about a story they once heard from somewhere, she will open one of those boxes, and she will read the letters out loud to them. She will tell them, this is what change actually looks like. Not the dramatic moment. The 1,000 quiet letters that come afterward. The 1,000 other people who finally felt seen, because one person stood very still in the doorway of her own aircraft and refused to disappear. And in the days and weeks that follow, something else will happen, something quieter and more powerful. Hundreds of other companies in the aviation industry will quietly begin reviewing their own training programs. Their own hiring practices. Their own discrimination reporting structures. Conferences will add new panels to their agendas. Industry associations will issue new guidelines. A small handful of competing airlines will reach out to Whitfield Aviation's compliance office to request copies of the new training materials, which will be shared freely, with no licensing fee attached, because Amara herself has insisted. If we hoard the lesson, she will say in a closed-door meeting, then the lesson dies with us. Share it. I love it. Because Amara Whitfield did not just respond to a slap on her own aircraft. She raised the standard for an entire industry. Not by yelling. Not by demanding sympathy. Not by performing pain for the cameras. She did it the way she has always done everything in her life. Slowly. Clearly. So that no one in any room could ever later claim they misunderstood her. A month later, on a quiet Saturday morning in Atlanta, Amara is sitting in her home office. There is a cup of tea cooling on the desk beside her. Her dog is asleep on the rug. Her phone is buzzing softly, but she is ignoring it. She is reading a handwritten letter that arrived in the morning mail. The letter is from Daniel Park. A is writing to tell her that he has been promoted, just last week, to a junior supervisory role. A is writing to thank her. A is writing to apologize, again, for not speaking up sooner on the day of the incident. A is writing to promise her that he will not freeze the next time. He is writing to tell her that the sound of the slap still echoes in his memory. But not as a wound. As a campus. When I want to know whether I am being the kind of man I want to be, he writes, I remember the sound. And I ask myself, if it happened again tonight, would I move faster this time? Would I find my voice this time? Would I be the person I should have been that afternoon? Most of the time, the answer now is yes. So many of the time, it is still no. But the question itself is changing me. And I wanted you to know. Amara reads the letter twice. Then she folds it. Slides it into a drawer. Takes a slow sip of her tea. Outside her window, the sun is just rising over the trees. Somewhere out on the tarmac at a private terminal 17 miles away, a different aircraft is preparing for departure. A different captain. A different crew. A different morning. Inside her office, on the wall, there is a single framed photograph. It is a picture of her, at 28 years old, standing next to her very first leased turboprop in a small regional airport in Georgia. She is wearing jeans and a windbreaker. Her hair is pulled back. She is smiling at the camera the way young people smile when they have no idea yet how heavy a future is going to be. She built that small leasing operation into one of the largest privately held aviation companies in North America. She did it through 3 decades of decisions made carefully, slowly, and clearly. She did it without raising her voice. She did it through being told, over and over again, that she did not belong in rooms she had paid to enter. She remembers the first time. She was 31. She had just signed her second aircraft lease. She walked into a meeting at a major bank in Midtown Manhattan to discuss financing, and the receptionist asked her if she was there to clean the conference room. She did not yell that day either. She simply walked past the receptionist, into the conference room, sat down at the head of the table, and waited. When the bankers arrived and realized who she was, 3 of them apologized immediately. 2 of them did not. The 2 who did not, never received a cent of her business again. The other 3, became her partners for the next 15 years. She had learned, by then, that consequence is the only language some rooms understand. She has been speaking that language ever since. And every time someone tells her she does not belong, she answers them the same way. Not with anger. Not with explanation. With consequence. The world finally learned to listen. And the people who refused to learn, learned anyway. Slowly. Or all at once. But always, eventually. She finishes her tea. Looks at the photograph on the wall one more time. Then turns to her computer and opens a new document. The board meeting is in 9 days. She has work to do. Now, if you have followed this story to the end, take a quiet moment. Not to be angry. Not to be vengeful. But to think. Think about how often, in your own life, someone has decided who you were before you ever opened your mouth. Think about how often you have done the same thing to someone else. Think about the cost of those decisions. Think about how many of them you can still take back. And think about the ones that you cannot. Because the woman in this story did not become powerful overnight. She did not earn her seat at the front of that aircraft because she demanded it. She earned it by building something. Quietly. Steadily. For 30 years. And the woman who slapped her in the face, did not lose her career because of one moment of cruelty. She lost it because of every smaller moment that came before it. Every smaller assumption. Every smaller laugh. Every smaller dismissal that no one ever pushed back on. The slap was just the moment the world finally got to see her. A single hand. A single sound. A single cabin. And everything that followed. There is a lesson buried inside this story that is worth saying out loud, very plainly, before we close it. The lesson is not that powerful people deserve respect. The lesson is that everyone deserves respect. And the only reason this story ended the way it did, is because the person being disrespected happened to also be powerful. But there are 1,000 versions of this story happening every day, in airports, in restaurants, in office buildings, in retail stores, in hospitals, in classrooms. 1,000 versions where the woman in the doorway does not own the building. Does not have a legal team on speed dial. Does not have a captain who recognizes her face. 1,000 versions where the slap is the end of the story, not the middle of it. Those women still deserve every protection that Amara Whitfield commanded for herself that afternoon. The work of building a more just world is not the work of producing more billionaires. It is the work of building systems that protect every person, regardless of whether anyone in the room happens to know their name. That is the standard worth fighting for. That is the standard Amara Whitfield, very quietly, has spent 30 years trying to raise. That is the standard the cabin of her own aircraft finally learned, the hard way, on a Tuesday afternoon, in front of 2 business partners, 2 crew members in a galley, 1 captain who could not believe what he had walked into, and 1 woman in a charcoal cashmere blazer who had been preparing for that exact moment her entire life. There is one more thing worth saying. The slap, when it happened, did not break Amara Whitfield. It did not even surprise her. She had been touched without permission before. By teachers. By strangers in elevators. By a manager at her first banking job who put his hand on the small of her back at a company dinner. By the security officer who stopped her at a high-end department store in her early 30s and asked, in front of other shoppers, to see her receipt before she could leave. She had absorbed all of those moments. Quietly. Without making a scene. Without filing a complaint. Because she had been a younger woman then. Because she had not yet built the company that would one day let her speak with the kind of finality that ends careers in a single phone call. She had stored every single one of those moments away. She had not forgotten any of them. She had simply been waiting, for the world to give her the kind of power that could speak back. The world had finally given her that power. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, the world had given her the chance to use it. She had used it. Not for revenge. Revenge is too small a word for what Amara Whitfield did that day. She used her power for instruction. For the construction of a record that other women would one day be able to point to. A record that would say, here is what it looks like when a woman with the means to fight back, finally fights back, and refuses to do it loudly. Here is what it looks like when consequence arrives wearing a quiet voice and a charcoal blazer. Here is what it looks like when a woman who has been told her entire life that she does not belong, finally walks into her own aircraft and tells the world. You have always belonged. And now you will have to live with that. That is the gift she left in the cabin that afternoon. Not for herself. For everyone who came after. The aircraft is in the air now. Has been for hours. The cabin lights are dim. The passengers are quiet. The cabin door is sealed. The runway is far behind them. And in seat 1, by the window, a woman with a faint red mark on her cheekbone is reviewing maintenance certifications. Calmly. Carefully. The way she has always done everything. Because the work goes on. The work always goes on. If this story moved you, if it made you stop, if it made you think, if it made you remember a moment in your own life, pause for a second. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Share the video with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments below, write 3 simple words. The 3 words that stayed with you the most after this story. Respect. Truth. Accountability. Because in a world that is constantly trying to convince us that some people belong and some people don't, that some voices matter and some don't, That some seats are earned and some are not, the only standard worth defending, is the one that applies to everyone. Every passenger. Every aircraft. Every story. Every team.